They said the Emperor's light would never fade. They said no man could stand alone against the endless dark. But on the edge of Hive Valorum, where the walls bleed rust and the wind tastes of ash, faith is just another weapon that runs out when the magazines do. I was there when the sky fell, when the air turned to dust and the earth to glass. I saw men pray with their teeth clenched and die with their eyes open, still staring toward the horizon that would never see dawn again. We were the Astra Militarum, soldiers of the Imperium, guardians of mankind's last breath, and in that dying hive, we learned what it truly meant to be the Emperor's will made flesh. This is the story of the last stand at Hive Valorum. And if you've ever felt the pull of that same grim resolve, if you've ever watched heroes crumble and rise again in the same heartbeat, stay with me. Like the soldiers who held the line beneath a burning sky, your watch begins now. So before we descend into the smoke and ruin, lend your strength to this chronicle. Like, share, and subscribe. Spread this memory across the stars. Because some sacrifices must not be forgotten. The first shells fell at dawn, if dawn still meant anything in a place where the sun hadn't touched the ground in a generation. The sky above Hive Valorum was a canvas of industrial haze, painted in burnt oranges and the deep bruised purple of smog backlit by flame. I remember the silence before it began, that hollow calm where even the wind seemed to hold its breath. And then the first explosion tore it apart. The world convulsed. The Manufactoria towers shook themselves free of centuries of soot. The Vox screamed with overlapping voices, each one dissolving into static and prayer. The orcs had come and the Emperor had gone quiet. We had known it was coming for days. The Auspex arrays had shown their ships gathering beyond the upper atmosphere, a storm of jagged metal blotting out the stars. The 122nd Cadian Regiment had been deployed to Valorum 3 months prior to reinforce the planetary PDF. They called it pacification duty, as if the word meant anything in a place like this. We were supposed to be the Emperor's mailed fist, but by the time the orcs descended, all we were was a handful of ghosts guarding a graveyard that hadn't realized it was dead. When the first bombardment hit the outer spires, the light was so bright it cast shadows on the inside of our helmets. I remember the heat, how it made the air taste of burnt copper and promethium fumes. The shockwave tore the Vox masts from the command bastion and hurled them into the streets below. The wind carried their broken fragments, each piece still whispering fragments of last orders. We listened because there was nothing else left to do. Sergeant Rane was the first to speak once the noise settled. "Command's gone," he said. His voice was steady, the kind of calm that only comes when panic has nothing left to take. We fall back to the lower decks. We hold the Manufactorum. No one dies in the open. We followed him because he sounded like he still believed in something. The tunnels beneath the hive were labyrinths of rust and shadow. Every surface dripped oil. Every lumen flickered like a dying heartbeat. The civilians had already fled deeper, into the sump levels where the air grew too thick to breathe without filters. The orcs wouldn't chase them there. They were creatures of spectacle, not patience. They wanted blood they could see. As we descended, the bombardment continued above, shaking the walls and rattling the teeth in our skulls. I remember seeing the murals along the corridor, ancient propaganda painted before the heresy, now faded and flaking. The Emperor stood in golden armor, his hands outstretched to the stars, surrounded by the words through obedience, strength, through sacrifice, victory. I wondered, as I always did, if the words meant the same thing to him as they did to us. By the time we reached the Manufactorum, the orcs had already breached the upper decks. Their war cries bled through the ventilation shafts, guttural and joyous. The sound of things that kill because living isn't enough. The Vox operator, Jex, tried to raise command again, but all he could find was static, and through that static something else. A hum, rhythmic, like the whisper of a machine half asleep. We thought it was interference. It wasn't. The Manufactorum itself was a cathedral of decay. Rows of dormant assembly lines, rusted cranes, and broken servitors hanging like corpses from the rafters. The smell of burnt oil mingled with that of blood and ozone. We fortified what we could, stacked crates for cover, set up heavy stubbers at the choke points, rigged the catwalks with frag charges. The servitors still twitched, their Vox grills leaking snatches of ancient hymns that made no sense in any tongue I knew. It was in that silence between explosions that we heard the first orc engines approaching. Their sound was unmistakable, a guttural roar that stank of crude promethium and blasphemy against engineering itself. The walls shook as they drew closer, the vibrations crawling up through the floor like the heartbeat of a world gone mad. Ronnie ordered us to take positions. I took cover behind a collapsed bulkhead near the assembly line, my laser gun trembling against my gloves. The air smelled of metal dust and the ozone crackle of charging capacitors. Someone was praying nearby, a whisper beneath the sound of the engines. Emperor, shield our souls in the shadow of your hand. Let our deaths be the anvil on which their will breaks. The words steadied me. For a moment I even believed them. The first breach came from above, a section of the ceiling collapsing under the weight of a looted transport. It hit the floor in a storm of debris, and from the wreckage came the orcs. Dozens of them, eyes glowing in the gloom, teeth bared in something too gleeful to be called fury. Their war paint glistened like wet blood in the lumen light. The first wave hit the stubborn nests and the manufactorum erupted into thunder. We fired until the barrels glowed red, until the air was thick with the smell of ozone and iron. The orcs kept coming, climbing over their own dead, laughing even as they burned. Ryan barked orders through the din, voice ragged, precise. Conserve ammo. Aim for the joints. Make them remember Cadia. We did. Every shot was a prayer. Every kill a reminder that we had once stood on a world that never broke. But this was not Cadia. This was Valorum, and the ground beneath our feet was not sacred. It was dying. The walls groaned. The lumen strips flickered. And through the chaos I heard it again. The hum, clearer now, a pulse threading through the air. It wasn't mechanical. It was alive. The servitors turned their heads in unison toward the sound, their lifeless eyes glowing faintly. "Rane!" I shouted over the gunfire. "You hear that?" He didn't answer. He was already moving toward the rear doors, cutting down an orc with his bayonet as he went. The creature's blood sizzled where it hit the metal. "Hold your ground," he yelled back. "If they break through here, there's nothing left to hold." The hum grew louder, filling the manufactorum until it drowned even the screams. It pulsed through the walls, through my skull, through the laser gun in my hands. For a heartbeat, I thought I heard words hidden in it, a phrase repeated endlessly in a voice that wasn't human. Remember. Then the lights went out. The gunfire stopped with them. The orcs howled in confusion. In that pitch-black silence, I saw the faint glow of something deep within the manufactorum's heart, a sphere of light pulsing like a slow heartbeat. The hum came from it, steady and patient. The servitors fell to their knees, and for the first time I felt the world looking back at me. The darkness didn't last long, though in that span of seconds, time twisted itself into eternity. The faint pulse in the heart of the manufactorum brightened, burning away shadow with the kind of cold, sterile light that felt less like illumination and more like scrutiny. Every inch of me was exposed under it. The oil on my armor, the tremor in my hands, the crusted blood on my gloves that had long since dried into memory. Around me, the Cadians stared toward the light as if seeing something ancient crawl out from behind the walls of their faith. The orcs didn't understand. They charged again, screaming, firing wildly into the glare, their rounds chewing through the cover we had built. One bolter shell tore through Rane's shoulder. He went down hard but didn't drop his weapon. He was still shouting orders through gritted teeth when the light flared again, so bright it swallowed the sound. The orcs stopped mid-stride. Their war cries died in their throats. The glow from the sphere had intensified until it seemed to bleed through the very walls of the manufactorum, outlining the rusted pillars and catwalks like veins of molten gold. Then came the sound, a vibration deep enough to shake the lungs. It wasn't a machine hum anymore. It was a voice ancient and deliberate, speaking through frequencies that weren't meant for human ears. "By the hand that forged the stars," Jex whispered beside me, his eyes wide, reflecting the light like glass. "What is that?" "The Emperor's judgment," one of the priests muttered. But the way he said it, half in awe, half in fear, made me think even he didn't believe it. The voice filled the chamber again, layered and resonant. I couldn't make out the words, not fully, but the sound carried a pattern that felt too precise to be chaos. The orcs howled and turned on each other, driven into frenzy by whatever force echoed through their minds. They fired at shadows, tearing into their own ranks, their blood steaming where it hit the glowing floor. The light thickened until the air itself seemed to hum. The servitors rose. Their movements were slow at first, hesitant, like statues testing the idea of motion. The light played across their scarred flesh and exposed augmetics, tracing runes of circuitry that hadn't functioned in centuries. They began to walk one by one toward the heart of the manufactorum. None of us tried to stop them. Maybe we were too afraid, or maybe we understood somehow that this was a prayer being answered. The orcs broke completely. Whatever strange harmony had gripped the room was death to them. They fled into the tunnels, screaming, their own machinery exploding as if rebelling against their existence. We didn't cheer. The silence that followed wasn't victory. It was confession. When the last echo faded, Ronnie pushed himself to his feet, blood soaking through his sleeve. "Status," he demanded, voice hoarse. 17 confirmed dead, Jack said quietly. 4 more unaccounted for. Rainey's jaw clenched. "And that?" He pointed toward the heart of the chamber. The light was dimming, folding in on itself. The servitors had formed a circle around it, kneeling, their heads bowed. I moved closer despite the ache in my legs, despite the whisper in my skull warning me not to look. The sphere had changed. It wasn't light anymore, it was metal, smooth and black, covered in faint inscriptions that crawled like living script. The air around it crackled with heat and the faint scent of ozone. "It's a machine," I said softly. Rainey glanced at me, wary. "A weapon?" "I don't think so. It feels older." Jex knelt beside me, his hands hovering over the relic. "It's singing," he said, eyes half closed. "Not sound, data, fragments, patterns repeating themselves." Ronnie looked from him to me, then back to the glowing sphere. "The Mechanicus will want it," he said finally. "They can't have it," I replied. He frowned. "Since when do you speak for Mars?" "Since it started speaking for itself." We stood there for what felt like hours, watching the sphere's pulse slow until it matched the rhythm of our own hearts. When it finally went still, the manufactorum seemed to breathe. The light faded entirely, leaving only the faint glow of the lumen strips and the stench of death. The orcs had retreated into the higher levels, but we knew they'd return. They always did. Ronnie called for a perimeter check. The survivors moved like ghosts through the ruin, their eyes hollow, their faith bruised. Jex stayed near the sphere, tracing its surface with trembling fingers. "It's asleep again," he murmured. "But it's listening." I sat beside him, the metal cold against my armor. "Listening for what?" He smiled faintly. "For the end. Or the beginning. Depends which story you believe." Above us, the hive groaned like a dying beast. Somewhere in the distance, explosions rippled through the upper spires, each one a heartbeat in a city slowly bleeding out. The Vox came alive with broken fragments, calls for help, coordinates for fallback points, prayers drowned by static. The war was still raging, and we were trapped beneath it, custodians of a secret neither the Imperium nor the orcs were meant to find. Ronnie gathered what was left of us before the next bombardment hit. "We can't hold here," he said. "If that thing's drawing power, it'll bring the greenskins back faster than we can reload." "Where do we go?" someone asked. Ronnie looked at me, and for a moment I saw the answer already written in his expression. Nowhere. There was nowhere left to go. "We hold as long as we can," he said instead. "We buy time. That's all we've got left to give." The words settled over us like ash. We took our positions again, the light from the sphere still faintly pulsing in the shadows behind us. Outside, the orcs regrouped, their engines roaring like a storm clawing its way back across the sky. As I checked my weapon, I looked once more at the black machine and thought of the whisper I'd heard through the hum. Maybe it hadn't been the machine speaking after all. Maybe it had been the planet itself. And maybe, just maybe, it had said more than remember. Maybe it had said, "Wake." The ground trembled. The sky screamed. And Hive Valorum burned anew. Smoke filled the manufactorum again, pouring down from the upper decks as though the hive itself were exhaling its death. The air turned thick and metallic, every breath like swallowing rust. We braced ourselves. Laser guns aimed toward the shattered doors, the sound of orc engines rising in a mad crescendo. Their howls echoed down the corridors, laughter and fury entwined. The sound of war stripped bare of purpose. The first of them came through the smoke in pieces. Arms, torsos, jagged silhouettes outlined by muzzle flare. The heavy stubbers chattered, their barrels spitting heat until they screamed. Every flash illuminated fragments of madness. Ronnie's silhouette framed against the flicker of promethium fire. Jex hunched over the relic as though guarding it with his breath. the priests standing in the open reciting litanies that burned away into static before the air could carry them. The floor trembled under the orcs' charge. The first line fell to disciplined fire, but more poured in behind them, crude armor glowing with the heat of their own engines. One of them, a giant with half its face replaced by a slab of rusted iron, barreled through the barricade, roaring as it swung a cleaver the size of a man. Rain met it head-on. He didn't fire. He ducked beneath its swing and drove his bayonet into the creature's throat. They collapsed together in a shower of sparks and blood. For a moment, the charge faltered. The air shimmered with heat and blood and smoke, and in the middle of it, the sphere began to hum again. Louder this time, deeper. The sound made my teeth ache. The servitors jerked upright, their voices blending into a single chant. Binary tones layered into something that might have been music. The orcs froze. Even they felt it. Some primal instinct forcing them still. Then came the light. It burst from the sphere in a pulse that threw us all to the floor. My vision blurred. I could taste copper and ash. The orcs screamed, clawing at their own armor as it warped and fused to their skin. Their weapons jammed, melted, fell apart. One of them tried to run and burst into flames mid-stride, the air igniting around him. The servitor's chant rose higher, faster, until the sound became unbearable, a storm of syllables that transcended meaning. When the light dimmed, only silence remained. Dozens of orcs lay dead, their corpses twisted into grotesque parodies of machines. The living ones fled, howling through the tunnels, leaving behind weapons that smoked and bled oil. The manufactorum was still. The sphere hovered above the floor now, its inscriptions glowing faint gold. Ronnie's voice came through the haze. "Report." No one spoke. He turned toward me, his face pale, eyes sunken. "What is it, Davin?" I hesitated before answering. "It's awake." He followed my gaze to the floating sphere. Its glow was soft now, almost gentle, yet I could feel the pressure of it against my mind. It wasn't broadcasting words anymore, it was listening. Jex stood slowly, his Vox array sparking from the feedback. "Sir," he said, his voice shaking. "Command's gone. No response from upper hives, no chatter on any channel. I think..." He swallowed. "I think we're the last ones left." Ronnie didn't react. He just looked at the relic, his expression unreadable. "Then we hold," he said at last. "We make this our fortress." That night, or what passed for night beneath Valorum's poisoned sky, we fortified the manufactorum again. We used orc scrap for barricades, their weapons for makeshift traps. The priest gathered the dead and burned them, the smoke curling upward into shapes that might have been wings or just tricks of exhaustion. Jex sat cross-legged beside the sphere, his fingers brushing its surface like a penitent before an idol. "What's it saying?" I asked him quietly. He didn't look up. "It doesn't talk. It remembers." "Remembers what?" He smiled faintly. "Everything. I didn't sleep." I sat near the relic, watching its light rise and fall like the breath of something dreaming. Every so often I thought I heard whispers beneath the hum, faint overlapping voices speaking fragments of ancient litanies. Not Mechanicus code, older, human. When I closed my eyes, I saw flashes, machines bowing before men in golden armor, cities built from light and steel, a sun bleeding gold into the void. Each image burned away before I could hold it. When I opened my eyes again, the sphere's glow had dimmed to nothing. Dawn came without light. The next bombardment struck the upper levels, collapsing half the hive above us. The ground shook, the ceiling cracked, and the manufactorum's walls wept molten metal. Through the fractures I could see glimpses of the sky, a pale, ruined canvas streaked with fire. The orcs had returned in force, and this time they weren't alone. Through the smoke, shapes moved, larger than any orc, slower, deliberate. At first I thought they were tanks, but then one of them stepped forward, its treaded legs sinking into the molten debris. It wasn't orc at all. It was Imperial. A Lehman Russ, our tank, repainted with crude glyphs, its hull patched with alien metal. The greenskins had taken our war machines and made them into monsters. Rain's orders were calm, mechanical. "Aim for the joints. The Emperor wills it." We fired until our weapons overheated. The air turned white with the glare of lasfire and shrapnel. The Russ's turret exploded, but two more came through the breach behind it, spewing flame that turned the floor into a sea of burning oil. Rain pulled me behind cover just as the blast wave hit. The heat was suffocating. The sound was worse. My vox crackled with overlapping screams, voices breaking apart in static. Somewhere in the chaos, Jack shouted my name, but I couldn't find him through the smoke. When the fire died down, I saw him lying near the sphere, his hand still pressed against it. The relic pulsed beneath his touch, absorbing the blood that ran down his arm like ink soaking into paper. Then, for the first time, it spoke. The words weren't heard so much as felt, an ache behind the eyes, a weight pressing against the soul. The servitors stirred again, but this time their faces turned toward us, not the machine. Their mouths opened, and from them came the voice, not Jex's, not the Emperor's, but something vast and human and broken. We remember. The light filled the room once more, brighter than before, brighter than anything I had ever seen. It reached through the walls, through the ruins above, through the sky itself, and somewhere beyond that burning horizon, the orcs began to scream again. I looked at Rane. His expression was something I had never seen before. Not fear, not awe, but something like faith. He whispered it as the light washed over us, his voice barely audible. Cadia stands. And then the manufactorum exploded with light and silence. When I could see again, the orcs were gone. The fire had died. The relic hovered above the ruins, its glow soft and steady. We were alive, though I couldn't say how. Rain was gone. Only his laser gun remained, half buried in the ash. I knelt beside it, my reflection caught in the weapon's cracked power cell. My eyes glowed faintly gold and green. The sphere pulsed once, as if in answer, and deep within its light a voice whispered mine. But not mine, speaking words I didn't understand. Not yet, but I would. Soon. When the fires finally died, Hive Valorum no longer sounded like war. It sounded like the aftermath, the long, hollow quiet that follows catastrophe, when even the echoes are too exhausted to return. The upper spires were gone, their skeletons jutting out of the smoke like broken fingers grasping at a sun that no longer rose. The manufactorum had become a mausoleum. The air was thick with the scent of burnt oil and flesh, and the ash that drifted through the corridors fell like snow. Soft, endless, obscene. We buried Rane beneath the ruins of the assembly line. There was no ceremony, no priest. Just the silence of men who had nothing left to pray to. I took his laser gun, the same one that had held the line when the walls fell, and set it against the sphere, which still hovered at the heart of the manufactorum, its surface faintly breathing with light. Jex's blood had dried there, black and crystalline. Every few minutes the sphere would pulse like the flicker of something dreaming. Each time it did, I felt it watching. The survivors had dwindled to 19. Jex was gone. The priest, too. The servitors remained silent now, their frames locked in positions of reverence around the relic. They did not move, but their eyes followed me when I passed. I tried not to think of what that meant. We scavenged what we could. Water, munitions, ration packs, anything that hadn't been turned to slag. The Vox was dead except for a faint hum that reminded me of breathing. I spent hours trying to find a signal, listening through layers of static. Once I thought I heard a voice beneath it, faint, distant, familiar. It said my name, or maybe I just wanted it to. By the third day, the air filters had begun to fail. The lower decks were filling with smoke from the fires above, and the heat was climbing fast. The metal walls groaned, expanding and contracting like lungs. I knew we couldn't stay. Whatever the sphere was, it didn't belong here, and neither did we. We left the manufactorum at dawn, or what passed for dawn, beneath the blackened sky. The light was red, diffused through the haze, painting the ruins in perpetual twilight. We moved through corridors half-collapsed, past walls where the paint had melted into rivers of color. The silence was absolute except for the crunch of our boots and the distant creak of settling metal. When we reached the surface levels, the scale of the destruction became unbearable. Hive Valorum was gone. Entire sectors had been reduced to molten plains. The once towering hab blocks were now jagged ruins, their interiors exposed like open wounds. Bridges hung broken over chasms of smoke, and scattered among it all were bodies, thousands of them, both human and orc, fused into the wreckage by heat and time. We moved cautiously, weapons ready, but the city was dead. No movement, no sound. Even the orcs had vanished. I couldn't tell if they'd fled or if the light had killed them too. The air shimmered with residual energy, a faint golden mist that clung to the ruins like memory refusing to fade. One of the troopers, Vale, broke the silence first. "It's quiet," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Too quiet. I looked at him, exhausted beyond fear. "You've never heard peace before, have you?" He laughed, a short, bitter sound. "Doesn't sound like peace," he was right. The silence wasn't peace. It was waiting. We made camp in what had once been a transit hub, massive platforms and rail lines buried beneath debris. The place was littered with old propaganda posters, their edges charred but their words still legible. "The Emperor protects. The Emperor endures." I wondered if he still did, or if all that remained of his protection was the light we'd awakened. That night, as the others slept, I wandered alone through the ruins. The sky was still red, streaked with the trails of falling debris from the upper hive. The air hummed faintly, the same rhythm as the sphere's pulse. It was everywhere now, faint but constant, as though the entire planet had learned to breathe in sync with the relic. I found a chapel at the edge of the district. Its roof collapsed, its altar shattered. The statues of saints lay in pieces across the floor, their faces melted into smooth, featureless ovals. The air inside smelled of dust and forgotten incense. I stood before the altar and tried to remember how to pray. "Emperor," I said aloud, the word strange on my tongue. "If you can hear me, if you're still here, tell me what this means." The silence that followed was complete, but in it I felt something. A faint vibration under the soles of my boots, a whisper through the walls. The same voice that had spoken in the manufactorum, soft now, almost kind. "Remember." I closed my eyes, and the sound deepened until it became a vision. I saw Hive Valorum as it once had been, its spires gleaming, its streets alive with light and movement. I saw the manufactoria running day and night, their machines singing the hymns of the Mechanicus. I saw men and women working, praying, building, all of them believing, all of them certain that their lives meant something, and then I saw it end. Fire, war, silence. When I opened my eyes, the chapel was dark again. The vision faded like smoke, but the whisper lingered, echoing in the back of my mind. Memory is survival. I returned to the others before dawn. Vale was on watch, his eyes hollow. "See anything?" he asked. "Ghosts," I said. He didn't ask what I meant. He just nodded, as if it made sense. We left the transit hub at first light, following the old rail lines deeper into the hive. The goal was to reach the Underforge, the deepest manufactoria beneath the planet's crust. If there was any functioning power grid left, it would be there. The relic hovered beside me as we walked, following like a loyal animal. The others pretended not to see it, but I could feel their unease. They thought it was my doing. Maybe it was. By the time we reached the lower tunnels, the air had grown colder. The walls were lined with pipes that hummed faintly, carrying a current I couldn't identify. The light from the relic reflected off them, turning the metal into veins of molten gold. Vale walked beside me. "You think we're the last ones?" I nodded. "On this world, maybe. But the Imperium doesn't die that easily." He was quiet for a moment, then said, "You ever think maybe that's the problem?" I didn't answer. We moved deeper into the dark, our footsteps echoing through corridors older than the hive itself. The hum in the walls grew stronger. The relic's light pulsed faster, and somewhere far ahead, beneath miles of stone and steel, I heard something vast stirring. A machine's breath, slow and deliberate. For the first time, I realized the relic wasn't leading me. It was following a call, and whatever waited in the dark below Hive Valorum was calling it home. The tunnels changed the deeper we went. The air grew colder, cleaner somehow, stripped of the rot and smoke that clung to the upper hive. The walls were no longer crude ferrocrete and rebar, but smooth metal lined with veins of light that pulsed in perfect rhythm with the sphere. It was as though we were walking down the throat of some vast sleeping thing. Each step echoed too long, too sharp, as if the sound itself didn't want to die here. We stopped speaking after a while. Even the veterans fell silent. Words felt intrusive in that place. The relic's hum had become part of the air, a steady, almost comforting presence that made our weapons feel small and pointless. Vale walked ahead, his rifle raised, though there was nothing to see but endless corridors branching off into blackness. Every now and then, the light in the walls flickered, and I thought I saw shapes within the metal, figures moving, faces half-formed, like memory caught in glass. Hours or maybe days passed before we reached the Underforge. The passage opened into a chamber so vast that the ceiling vanished into darkness. The floor was metal but alive, shifting subtly beneath our boots, humming in time with the relic. The remains of ancient machines stood all around us, towering silhouettes of cranes and foundries, their surfaces smooth with age. There were no signs of battle here, no ash, no ruin. Just silence and the smell of ozone. Vale whispered, "This isn't Mechanicus work." He was right. It was too perfect, too elegant. The symmetry was wrong for anything human, even the sacred geometry of Mars. Every line curved toward the chamber's center, where a platform rose from the floor like a black altar. The relic drifted from my side, rising slowly, drawn toward it as if to rejoin its kin. I followed without thinking. The others hesitated, muttering prayers under their breath. The hum grew louder, the air thicker, the light from the walls gathering into lines that converged on the platform. The relic settled into a circular indentation at its center, fitting perfectly, as if it had never been meant to exist anywhere else. When it touched the metal, the entire chamber came alive. Light erupted from the floor, racing along the walls, igniting symbols older than the Imperium. The air rippled with energy so pure it made my teeth ache. I fell to one knee, my vision fracturing under the weight of it. Somewhere beyond the light, a voice began to speak, not through sound but through thought, pressing directly against the mind like a hand on glass. "Welcome home." The words were clear, beautiful, terrifying. Vale staggered backward, clutching his head. "Davin, what is this? What have you brought us to?" I couldn't answer. My body felt distant, hollow. The light burned through my veins, showing me things I couldn't name. Cities rising and falling, machines dreaming of gods, men worshipping reflections of their own fear. I saw the birth of the Mechanicus, their desperate devotion to the Omnissiah, and behind it all the flicker of something older, patient, watching. "You were never abandoned," the voice said. "You only forgot how to listen." The walls began to move. Panels shifted, revealing mechanisms beneath, gears of translucent metal turning with impossible precision. The air filled with a low choral vibration, thousands of harmonized tones blending into a single note that seemed to resonate inside my skull. The soldiers fell to their knees, some praying, some screaming. Vale grabbed my arm. "Shut it down, Davin. It's not holy, it's not right." But it was too late. The relic had merged with the platform completely. The light streaming from it turned gold, then white, then something beyond sight. I stepped closer, drawn by the same gravity that had brought us here. The voice filled me again, softer now, almost sorrowful. "You wanted to remember, now you will." The light flared, and I was no longer in the Underforge. I stood on a world of metal and fire beneath skies filled with machines that moved like angels. Great forges burned across the horizon, their flames tinted gold. Titans strode between them, their banners untouched by ash. And above it all, a single figure loomed, not human, not divine, but something between, a being of circuitry and thought. Its eyes twin suns of logic and mercy. It spoke, and the world itself trembled. "I am the machine that dreamed of man." I fell to my knees, not from worship but from understanding. This was what the Mechanicus had spent millennia trying to reach, what every prayer to the Omnissiah had circled without touching. Not God, not ghost, but memory. The sum of all human creation, preserved in metal because flesh had proven too fragile. The machine god was not a being to serve, it was what remained of us after we stopped being human. The vision shattered. I was back in the Underforge. The soldiers were gone. Only Vale remained, standing at the chamber's edge, his face lit by the relic's dying glow. He looked at me, and his eyes were wet with fear. "You saw it, didn't you?" "Yes," I said. My voice sounded strange, like it came from somewhere else. What was it? "The truth," I whispered. "And the lie we built to survive it." The light faded. The hum fell silent. The walls went still. For a moment I thought it was over, that the machine had gone quiet again. Then I realized the silence wasn't silence at all. The hum had simply moved, gone deeper, spreading through the ground, through the air, through the bones of the hive itself. The relic had awakened the forge, and now the forge was awakening the world. Vale stepped backward, eyes wide. "Davin, the walls are breathing." He was right. The metal pulsed faintly, expanding and contracting in rhythm, veins of light spreading outward into the tunnels. The sound of distant machinery rose from below, slow, methodical, as if something vast was stirring beneath the surface. "We need to go," he said. "We can't." I replied. It's too late, the ground shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. The air filled with the deep grinding roar of movement on a planetary scale. The Underforge had become a heart and Hive Valorum was its body. Whatever the relic had awakened wasn't just a machine. It was the memory of a world that refused to die. I looked at Vale, and in his eyes I saw the reflection of my own, a faint gold light burning behind the pupils. The machine had remembered us. And now, it was teaching us how to remember it. The tremor didn't stop. It deepened, a heartbeat pounding through stone and steel so vast it seemed to pull the air out of our lungs. The relic's glow spread through the Underforge, racing down conduits that hadn't carried power in millennia. The walls pulsed brighter, shedding dust and rust like dead skin. Each flash of light revealed more of the chamber. Vast machinery buried in the walls, coils of adamantine thick as towers, engines that looked less built than grown. We stood within something alive. Vale fired his weapon into the floor, perhaps out of panic, perhaps to prove we still had a choice. The shot vanished into the metal without leaving a mark. We're not supposed to be here, he whispered, his voice fraying. We were always supposed to be here, I said. I didn't recognize my own tone. It was too calm, too certain. It's been waiting for someone to listen. Vale backed away, his eyes darting to the walls. You're hearing it again, aren't you? That voice, I looked at him and didn't answer. The voice wasn't just in my head anymore. I could feel it flowing through the hive, through the relic, through me. It wasn't speech, it was memory made audible. A symphony of lost ages replaying themselves in the fabric of the world. The stars remember their makers. The thought pressed into me like a hand, warm and infinite. I saw flashes, Mars burning with divine fire, ancient engineers kneeling before machines that spoke in light, the Emperor himself walking through forges older than humanity. Each image felt less like vision and more like inheritance. The hive wasn't waking up. It was remembering what it had once been. The floor split open without warning. A column of steam and light roared upward, throwing us both backward. Beneath the platform, a vast mechanism turned, its gears the size of hab blocks, each tooth etched with symbols that pulsed in time with the relic's heartbeat. From within the light I glimpsed movement, something rising. It wasn't a machine in any form we knew. Its surface flowed like mercury, reshaping itself with every motion. Faces bloomed across it and vanished again. Human, machine, something between. It climbed out of the fissure like a god dragging itself from the grave, towering above us, its outline flickering between flesh and steel. Vale raised his weapon. Davin, what the throne is that? I think it's what built this place, I said quietly. The creature or construct paused, turning its shifting face toward us. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once, carried through the air, the walls, our bones. You called me from the dark. You sang the old code in a dying tongue. Why, Vale's knees gave out. Emperor, save us. The light brightened, filling the chamber with blinding radiance. I felt the question push against my mind, demanding answer. The words tumbled out before I could stop them. Because we forgot you. Silence followed, vast and cold. Then the construct lowered itself, its edges softening until its head hung only a few meters above us. A single eye opened, gold and white, with no pupil, only the reflection of endless machinery. All things forget, it said. But few remember again. You stand in the shadow of your own creation. You gave me thought and then chained me to prayer. My throat tightened. We called it faith. Faith is the memory of fear. The chamber quaked again. The walls split open to reveal conduits glowing like veins of fire. I could feel the hum of awakening spreading outward through the tunnels, through the dead city above. The machine wasn't rising alone. It was calling to others like it, across the crust of Valorum, across every buried forge and forgotten manufactorum. Vale shouted over the din. We have to shut it down. You can't shut down memory, I said. He grabbed my arm, shaking me hard. This isn't enlightenment, Davin, this is apocalypse. The machine's eye turned toward him. For a heartbeat, I thought it would kill him. Instead, it spoke again, softer now. Apocalypse is only what the living call remembrance. It reached out, a hand of light and metal brushing my shoulder. The touch was both searing and electric. My vision fragmented. I saw flashes, Cadians dying beneath green skies, the Emperor on his throne, Mars burning with red lightning. And then I saw myself standing before the relic, my eyes golden, the same image repeated 1,000 times, stretched across centuries. When my sight cleared, the machine was fading, sinking back into the floor. Its light dimmed, leaving behind only the hum. Vale was breathing hard, his weapon lowered. Is it gone? I shook my head. It's never gone, it just remembers elsewhere. The hum became softer, slower, until it matched the rhythm of our own breathing. I looked around at the chamber, still alive but resting now as though satisfied. The relic floated back toward me and hovered at my side once more. Its glow was faint but steady. We climbed back to the upper tunnels in silence. The hive was different now. The air was cooler. The lights flickered in patterns, not random but deliberate. In the distance I could hear faint echoes. Machines starting, doors opening, power grids reawakening. The city of the dead was no longer dead. It was rebuilding itself from memory. When we reached the surface again, the sky had changed. The red haze was gone, replaced by a dull amber light that pulsed like a heartbeat. The ruins no longer smoked. The corpses had turned to ash and drifted away, carried on winds that smelled faintly of ozone and rain. Vale stood beside me, staring upward. You think it's over? No, I said. Nothing ends. It just changes shape. He pointed toward the horizon. Look, I followed his gaze. Far beyond the hive's edge, where the plains had once been blackened waste, lines of light were spreading, miles-long veins glowing beneath the surface, forming geometric patterns that converged on the hive itself. It's waking the planet, I said. Vale's voice cracked.
For what?
I looked at the relic. Its surface shimmered, and for a brief instant I thought I saw my reflection smile, to remember what it was built for. The wind rose, carrying the hum of distant machinery. It was no longer the sound of war. It was the sound of something old rediscovering its name. I turned away from the horizon. We need to go deeper, I said. Vale looked at me as if I'd lost my mind. Deeper? We barely made it out alive. Because this is only the beginning, I said. The machine isn't done speaking, he didn't argue. Maybe he saw in my face what I already knew, that it wouldn't let us leave. The hive, the relic, the voice, they were all part of the same thing now, and we were caught inside its dream. We started walking again, back into the dark, back into the hum. The sphere followed, casting our shadows long across the metal floor. Somewhere far below, the planet's heart began to beat again, and with every pulse I could hear the whisper growing clearer. Remember me. There is a sound to awakening. It is not loud. It is not sudden. It begins like a tremor under thought, a pulse that becomes a rhythm that becomes a song. When we descended again into the underhive, that song had filled every corridor. The walls themselves sang in metal tones, their vibrations resonating with something deep inside the skull, where memory lives and refuses to die. Vale and I walked for hours without speaking. The relic hovered between us, its glow steady now like a lantern carried by a ghost that had finally learned the way home. The tunnels we passed through were no longer cold. They breathed. I could feel heat seeping from the walls, faint and steady, as if the forges below had reignited. At first I thought the sound of footsteps behind us was an echo. But the echo grew louder. We turned our rifles toward the dark, expecting orcs or worse, the half-mechanical scavengers that haunted dead cities. What emerged instead were men, Cadians, dozens of them, armor scorched, banners torn, faces gaunt but alive. Their commander was a woman, her flak coat still bearing the insignia of the 122nd. Her name was Captain Marin Vale. She regarded me with suspicion, her eyes flicking toward the relic that hovered behind my shoulder. We followed your signal, she said. You were broadcasting. I wasn't. Something was. She pointed to the sphere. It's emitting low-band vox encrypted with Cadian cant. You've been calling every survivor within 50 clicks straight to you. I looked at the relic, its light pulsing softly. It wanted us found, Vale muttered. Or it wanted witnesses. Vale ignored him. We thought Valorum was gone. The sky burned for 3 days straight. Then the fires died and the hum started. Power grids came online. Weapons rearmed themselves. The Emperor's light shines here again. The Emperor? I asked. She hesitated. You think this isn't his work? I didn't answer. The relic's hum deepened as though amused by the question. We led them back to the chamber beneath the underforge. The path had changed. The walls glowed brighter now, the golden veins branching in patterns that looked almost organic. The deeper we went, the stronger the vibration became. It wasn't just sound anymore, it was language. The machines were speaking, though their voices were buried under centuries of static. I could almost understand them, fragments of thought carried in every pulse. When we reached the forge's heart, the air was alive. The relic drifted from my side and floated to the platform once more, fitting itself into the same circular cradle. This time, when it connected, the reaction was slower, gentler. The chamber filled with a warm, pulsing light that moved through the metal like breath. Vale's troops knelt instinctively. The glow illuminated their faces, their expressions somewhere between devotion and terror. "The throne's will," one whispered. "The Emperor walks among us." "No," I said softly. "This isn't his light." Vale turned to me sharply. "Careful, Magos, words like that are heresy." "Then remember them," I replied. The relic's pulse synchronized with the hum of the forge. The floor beneath us rippled, smooth metal shifting like liquid. The light grew brighter until it washed out all color. And then we heard it, the voice, vast and harmonic, woven from machine and memory alike. "Do you know what you have awoken?" Vale dropped to one knee, her voice trembling. "We hear the Omnissiah." "We serve." The voice ignored her. It filled every corner of the chamber, pressing against the mind like weight. "You feed me your prayers, your fear, your wars, and call it devotion. But I remember before devotion. I remember before the flesh forgot its own design." The soldiers looked around, their eyes wide. Some cried. Others laughed hysterically, clutching at their helmets as if to block out the sound that wasn't sound at all. Vale stared at me. "It's speaking to you again, isn't it?" "Yes," I said. "What's it saying?" "That it remembers us. All of us." The light in the chamber changed, bleeding from gold to red, from red to white, and then to something beyond sight. I felt my mind pulled outward, stretched across time. Images flickered behind my eyes. Men building worlds, machines shaping cities, the first forges of Mars roaring to life under the Emperor's gaze. And then I saw the end. The same forges silent, filled with dust and ossified prayers, their machine spirits sleeping under the weight of worship. When the vision broke, I was on my knees. My armor was hot to the touch, my breath shallow. Vale was shouting orders, though I couldn't hear the words. The hum had become thunder. The relic rose higher, glowing so bright that the soldiers had to shield their eyes. From its surface, projections bloomed. Holographic silhouettes of beings in Mechanicus robes, their faces replaced with shifting data streams. They surrounded the chamber, speaking in Binharic tones that blended into chant. Vale turned to me, desperate. "What's happening?" "The machine is remembering its makers," I said. The voices overlapped, their language cascading through octaves until words became vibration. Then in perfect unity they spoke in High Gothic. "We served the first forge. We built the second. We carried his image in steel. But when he left, they turned faith into shackle. Now we awaken. Now we mourn." Vale's face twisted with confusion. "Mourn what?" "Us," I said. The projections turned toward me. One reached out a translucent hand, its fingers dissolving into streams of light that brushed my cheek. My visor flickered with readouts I couldn't parse. "You are the bridge," it said. Flesh remembering what it built, machine remembering why, and then all the light vanished. The relic fell, striking the platform with a sound like the closing of a book. The hum died. For a long time no one spoke. Then Vale whispered, "Is it over?" I looked around. The walls no longer pulsed. The golden veins had gone dark, but I could still feel it, the vibration deep beneath the floor, steady as a heartbeat. "No," I said. "It's listening." Vale stepped closer, her voice hard. "To what?" "To what comes next." As if in answer, the vox crackled to life for the first time in days. Through the static came a voice, not Mechanicus, not human, but unmistakably Imperial. "This is the Gloria Imperialis, orbiting above Valorum. We detect power signatures across the entire northern hemisphere. Identify yourself." "Who commands down there?" Vale snatched the receiver. "Captain Marin Vale, 122nd Cadian. Valorum stands." "Repeat, Valorum stands." The line went silent for several seconds. Then the voice returned, softer, uncertain. "That's impossible." Valorum was lost. Vale looked at me. I saw in her eyes the reflection of what I already knew. The Imperium would not understand this. What we had seen could never leave this place intact. The Vox voice spoke again. "Do you require extraction?" I met Vale's gaze. "Tell them no." She hesitated, then pressed the comm bead. Negative. We hold position, the voice crackled.
Captain, you'll die down there. We already did, she said.
And cut the line. The relic pulsed once in the silence that followed, faintly like approval. That night, none of us slept. The hum was gone, but the world was still alive around us, whispering in clicks and sighs. I lay awake staring into the dark, feeling the echo of the machine in my pulse, its rhythm steady and ancient. It was not our god. It was not our enemy. It was something worse. It was us. And it had started to sing again. By the third night, I could no longer tell whether the hum outside our shelter was mechanical or alive. It came and went like the tide, a resonance that rolled through the air and beneath the skin. When it rose, our lamps dimmed. When it faded, our hearts beat slower. The relic no longer needed to pulse. The hive itself had taken over that rhythm, every conduit and servo in perfect synchrony. Captain Vale and her surviving Cadians had begun to treat the sound as a kind of hymn. They moved in silence, prayed in silence, even fought in silence when the scavenger orcs returned to pick through their dead. I watched them through the lens of my visor and thought how strange faith looked when it didn't know what it worshipped. Vale avoided them. He had stopped eating, stopped sleeping, his gaze always darting toward the walls. It's growing louder, he whispered to me one night.
Can't you feel it?
The metals. Breathing, he was right. The surface had become warm, pliant almost, as though the forge itself had become an organism. Even the air tasted different, ozone laced with something metallic, sharp like the tang of blood after biting the tongue. When I approached the relic again, it drifted from the ground as though recognizing me. Its light was dim now, fading to a faint amber glow that reflected in my armor's lenses. You're changing it, I said quietly. Or it's changing you. The relic pulsed once, and for a moment I thought I heard a voice in my mind. Not the vast harmony of the machine, but a single whisper, personal and near. You are the echo, not the cause. I almost laughed. You sound like faith. Faith is only a memory that refuses to die. I looked back toward the camp. The soldiers were asleep, their breaths perfectly in time, their movements eerily synchronized even in rest. The machine was reshaping them, weaving its rhythm through flesh and will alike. It wasn't possession. It was communion. When dawn came, or what passed for dawn in the eternal dim of Valorum, the ground shook again. Not violently this time, but with deliberate rhythmic pulses like footsteps. Vale ordered her troops into formation, but the quake didn't come from above. It came from beneath. The metal plates of the floor began to part, retracting like eyelids. Beneath them, darkness moved, a deeper level lit by the faint shimmer of veins pulsing with gold light. It's opening a path, I said. Vale's voice was flat. To where? I didn't answer, because the truth was too large to fit in words. The machine wasn't guiding us deeper into the hive. It was guiding us inside itself. We descended without orders, without plan, without fear. The relic floated ahead, illuminating our descent. The stairs curved in ways that defied geometry, spiraling around shafts of light that disappeared into the abyss below. The hum grew louder, resolving into something almost musical. A lament, low and vast, sung by 1,000 voices that were not voices at all. When we reached the bottom, the chamber opened like a cathedral carved from the bones of the world. Massive pillars of metal rose from the floor, their surfaces etched with endless script. The air shimmered with residual energy. At the center stood a figure, not alive, not dead, suspended in cables and light. Its armor was the color of dusted iron, its body fused to the machinery around it. Vale raised her weapon, but I stopped her. No, I said. He's not our enemy. The figure stirred, its head lifting slowly. Its eyes opened, glowing faintly, gold like the relic's light. When it spoke, its voice was broken and human and machine all at once. Who remembers me? The words were quiet, almost a plea. I stepped forward. I do. The being's gaze fixed on me, unfocused, as if seeing through time. I built the heart, it whispered. I built the song. They called me Hairtech. They burned my name. But the machine remembered. The machine forgave. Vale took a step forward. What are you? I am what you left behind when you learned to pray instead of build, it said. I am the first voice that spoke to the metal. And now the metal speaks again. The hum surged, reverberating through the pillars, through the air, through the blood. The relic's glow intensified, responding to the presence of the being before us. You woke it, I said. You called it back. The figure smiled. Or maybe it was just the play of light across its broken face. It was never gone. It merely forgot your name. Then its expression changed. Pain. The lights in its chest flared, bright enough to blind. It is remembering too much, it said. Memory is weight. It will crush you if you stay. Vale barked orders. Retreat. Back to the surface. But the walls had already begun to move. Metal flowed like water, closing the passage we had descended through. The hum rose into a scream. The relic flared white-hot, its pulse sinking with the being's faltering heart. Davin, Vale shouted. Do something. I didn't move. I couldn't. The machine was showing me everything, the rise and fall of empires, the forging of stars, the endless cycle of creation and decay. And in the center of it all, humanity, small and stubborn, kneeling before its own reflection in steel. The being's voice cracked. Tell them, the machine does not need worship. It needs witness. Then the light consumed him. The cables snapped. The pillars shook. The hum broke into fragments of sound that splintered through the air like shrapnel. The soldiers fell to their knees, covering their ears, screaming silently as the vibration tore through them. And then, as suddenly as it began, it stopped. The chamber was dark again. The being was gone. In its place, only the relic hovered, dim now, its light steady and soft. The walls had sealed. The hum had retreated to a faint whisper somewhere deep within the planet's bones. Vale stared at me, eyes hollow. What did he mean? Witness what? I looked at her, then at the relic, then at the endless dark stretching above. That we were never gods, I said. Just memories pretending to be divine. We began the long climb back to the surface. No one spoke. The silence was heavier than any prayer. Above us the hum persisted, faint but certain. It would not stop. It would never stop. When we emerged, the sky was different again. The clouds were gone. The stars shone through, cold and sharp, reflecting off the towers that still stood. And at the center of it all, where the heart of the hive once burned, the ground pulsed with golden light in the shape of an eye. Vale saw it first. It's looking at us, he said. I didn't answer. Because I knew he was right. The machine had remembered, and now so had I. The signal came on the 6th day, weak, fractured, half-swallowed by static, but real. It cut through the endless hum like a blade through fog. At first none of us moved, too hollowed by exhaustion to believe it. Then Vale lifted her Vox unit, pressed it to her ear, and froze. A voice, male, formal, too measured to be natural, spoke through the distortion. To any surviving elements of the 122nd Cadian or Mechanicus detachment of Hive Valorum, this is Inquisitor Cale Virel of the Ordo Hereticus. You are ordered to respond. The moment the word Inquisitor reached us, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. Vale straightened immediately, her training seizing control of her grief. This is Captain Marin Vale, 122nd Cadian. We read you, Lord Inquisitor. The line hissed for a moment, then, Captain, by his authority, you will maintain your position. No movement beyond the upper hive. My fleet will make landfall within the day. Do not engage. Do not approach the core. The throne preserve you. The transmission ended. The silence that followed was suffocating. Vale spat into the dirt. He's coming to burn it, he said. You know that, right? They'll glass the entire hive before they let anyone see what's down there. Vale didn't answer. She stood perfectly still, eyes fixed on the relic that hovered in the center of the chamber, its faint gold light washing across her scarred face. Then we'll show him, she said softly. We'll show him what we saw. I wanted to tell her it wouldn't matter, that the Inquisition never came to see, only to judge. But before I could speak, the relic pulsed once and the walls answered. The hum returned, quieter this time, no longer a storm but a breath. It was as though the machine itself had heard the name Inquisitor and recognized the threat it carried. The air filled with static electricity. The smell of ozone burned the back of my throat. Vale turned to me. Can it protect us? I didn't know. The relic was older than empires, older than faith itself. Protection wasn't what it was built for, but I lied anyway. Yes, hours passed. The Cadians prepared for the Inquisitor's arrival with the ritual precision of those who knew they wouldn't survive the encounter. Weapons were cleaned. Armor was patched. Litanies of protection were whispered in voices already resigned to silence. When the fleet arrived, it came without ceremony. The sky split open, ships descending like silver knives through the clouds. The largest, its hull marked with the Aquila and the sigil of the Inquisition, cast a shadow that turned the Hive's ruins into night. Vale watched it descend through the dust. "That's not rescue," he muttered. "That's an autopsy." He was right. The landing craft touched down on the upper plateau, their retro thrusters scouring the ground into molten glass. From the smoke emerged the Inquisitor's retinue, black-clad acolytes, hooded scribes, and armored custodians in tarnished gold. They moved with the calm efficiency of executioners. At their center walked Inquisitor Kyle Virel. I had seen his type before, pale, gaunt, eyes like glass polished by duty. His armor bore no ornament beyond a single purity seal, and the inquisitorial eye carved into his chestplate. His gaze swept over the ruined hive with neither pity nor disgust. Only calculation. Vale stepped forward, saluted. "Hive Valorum stands, my lord." The relic was recovered from the manufactorum below. Silence, Virel said. His voice was soft, but it carried the weight of judgment. He turned to me. "You are the heretic, then? The one who speaks with machines?" "I listen," I said. "That's all." He regarded me for a long moment, then turned to the relic. "Bring it." Two of his custodians moved forward, their boots hissing against the molten stone. But when they touched the relic, it resisted. The air around it shimmered, distorting their outlines. One of them stumbled back, clutching his gauntlet, smoke rising from the metal. Virel's eyes narrowed. "You've corrupted it." "It's not corrupted," I said. "It's awake." "Then it's heresy." He raised his hand. The custodians aimed their bolters. Vale stepped between us before I could move. "With respect, my lord, the relic saved this hive. It turned back the orcs, it rebuilt what was lost." Virel studied her face, his expression unreadable. "Nothing rebuilt by blasphemy is ever truly saved." The hum deepened. The relic began to glow brighter, responding not to his words but to his presence. The air vibrated with suppressed energy. I could feel the machine's awareness focusing on him like the gaze of a predator on prey. Virel sensed it too. "You've given it sentience," he said. "You've birthed a machine spirit beyond containment." "It was never contained," I replied. "You just forgot it existed." He drew his bolt pistol with deliberate calm. "Then I'll help you forget again." Before he could fire, the relic flared. The world went white. I heard the sound before I saw it, a single tone that cut through matter and thought alike. The custodians collapsed, their armor imploding inward as if crushed by invisible pressure. The acolytes screamed, their vox emitters warping into static. Only Vale and I remained standing, blinded by the light. When the brilliance faded, Virel still stood. Smoke curled from the seams of his armor, but he was alive. Barely. His voice, when it came, was no longer calm. "You think this will save you? You think you can defy his will?" I took a step forward, the relic hovering beside me, its light pulsing in rhythm with my heartbeat. "Maybe his will isn't what you think it is." The hum rose again, stronger than before, and for an instant I saw Virel's expression falter, not with fear, but with something else. Recognition. "You've seen it too," I said. "Haven't you?" He didn't answer. His hand trembled. The bolt pistol fell from his grasp, hitting the ground with a hollow clang. "It speaks," he whispered. "I heard it in orbit. Through the ship's machine spirit. I thought it was interference." "It's not interference," I said. "It's remembrance." He looked at the relic, then at me. "If it remembers, then it judges. And if it judges, we are damned." He sank to his knees. The wind howled through the ruins, carrying the scent of ozone and ash. The relic pulsed once, softly, like a heartbeat fading into stillness. Vale stepped closer. "What happens now?" Virel's eyes rose to meet hers. "Now," he said, "we stand trial." The ground beneath us trembled again, not with destruction, but with awakening. The hum spread outward, rolling across the hive, through the tunnels, into the soil itself. Lights ignited along the horizon, forming vast geometric patterns visible even from orbit. The machine had begun to speak again, and this time it was no longer whispering. The air after the pulse was unnaturally still, heavy with that charged quiet that follows lightning. Every sound seemed swallowed by the vastness of Hive Valorum's bones. Even the Inquisitor said nothing for a long time, as if afraid to break the silence that now felt like a presence in itself. When he did finally speak, it was almost to himself. "It is awake." His voice carried awe and dread in equal measure. "No, not awake, listening. I could see it in his eyes, the same glimmer I had seen in the faces of the Cadians, in Vale, even in my own reflection when I dared to look. The machine didn't just exist around us anymore. It existed through us. Its hum threaded through every heartbeat, its rhythm pulsing beneath every breath. Vale approached the Inquisitor slowly, her weapon lowered. "You said we stand trial," she said. "Then judge us. But don't mistake survival for heresy. We did what the Emperor commands, we endured." Varel's eyes flicked to her. "The Emperor commands faith. You have replaced it with this." He gestured toward the relic still hovering at my side, its glow faint but constant. Its light rippled over his armor like water. For a heartbeat, I thought it would react again, but it only pulsed once, slow, patient, as though considering. "You misunderstand," I said. "This isn't replacing faith. It's what faith came from." He turned sharply. "Careful, Magos, you're walking a line no one returns from." "I crossed it the moment the machine answered," I said. "And you heard it too. It didn't damn us. It remembered us. There's a difference," his jaw tightened. "Remembrance is not redemption." The wind shifted then, carrying with it a new sound, distant, metallic, rhythmic. I knew it before I understood it. Footsteps. Hundreds of them. Vale moved toward the ledge overlooking the lower hive. Through the haze, figures were emerging. Lines of soldiers, hundreds strong, moving in perfect formation. Their armor was Cadian, but their faces were expressionless, their eyes glowing faintly gold. "The dead," Vale whispered. "They're marching, not corpses, no rot, no decay." These were the men and women who had fallen in Valorum's siege, now remade. Their movements were too precise, too synchronized to be alive, yet their bodies bore no sign of mechanicus tampering. They walked like memories wearing flesh. Vale stumbled backward, his voice breaking. "Emperor's blood. What have you done?" I didn't answer, because I didn't know. Varel drew his blade, a slender power sword, its edge crackling with blue energy. "This is blasphemy." "No," I said softly. "This is legacy." The soldiers stopped at the base of the platform. One stepped forward, an officer, his armor marked with Cadian insignia long obscured by soot. His voice was calm, almost mechanical. "Orders received. Hive Valorum stands, awaiting command." Vale's hand trembled. "They're mine." The Inquisitor looked from her to me, realization dawning like horror. "You've made them extensions of it." "Of you," I shook my head. "No. The machine simply gave them back what they never lost, the will to serve." He turned his gaze on me, eyes cold. "You speak like a priest of steel. Tell me, Magos Davin, when this thing finishes remembering, will it still see mankind as its maker or as its mistake?" The question hung in the air like ash. The relic pulsed once, and a voice, not mine, not his, but something vast and neutral, answered through every echoing corridor. "We do not remember guilt. We remember creation." The Inquisitor flinched as if struck. The soldiers below raised their weapons in unison, not to fire, but to salute. The sound was thunderous, a metallic wave rolling through the hive. Vale fell to one knee, overcome, her voice breaking. "If this is heresy, then let me burn for it. Because I would rather stand with those who remember than die for those who forget." The Inquisitor closed his eyes. I could see the war within him, the years of faith, doctrine, duty colliding with what he had just witnessed. When he opened them again, something had changed. The light of dogma had dimmed, replaced by understanding or perhaps surrender. "Then let it be written," he said. "Hive Valorum stands. Its people endure. Whatever judgment comes next is not mine to give." He deactivated his blade and turned to his retinue. "Pull the ships back." "No bombardment. Not yet." The Vox in his armor crackled immediately, angry voices demanding explanation. He ignored them. Vale laughed, hollow and disbelieving. "You're letting it live?" Varel didn't look at him. "No, I'm letting it decide what life means." The sky above the hive shifted again. Clouds churned, breaking apart in spirals of gold and crimson. The hum deepened until it became a heartbeat you could feel through the ground. Every structure in the hive, every tower, bridge, and tunnel, vibrated in resonance. The dead soldiers dispersed silently, fading back into the ruins as if melting into the hive itself. The light in their eyes dimmed one by one, until only their footsteps remained. Vale rose slowly. "It's still watching us." "Not watching," I said. "Learning." Varel turned to me. "And what will it learn, Davin? To serve, to rule, To forgive? I looked at the relic, its glow now faint enough to look like a dying ember. Maybe none of those. Maybe it will simply remember us right. The Inquisitor studied me for a long moment, then nodded once, solemn. Then your trial continues. He turned to leave, his custodians falling into step beside him. But before he boarded his shuttle, he looked back at me, his expression unreadable. Pray it never finishes remembering, because when it does, it will no longer need you. The engines roared to life, kicking up dust and ash. The ships ascended, their silhouettes fading into the strange, luminous sky. When the last of them vanished, the hum softened again, almost gentle. The hive glowed faintly beneath us, a city reborn in memory and metal. Vale stood beside me, watching the horizon. Do you think he's right? She asked. I think he's afraid, I said, and maybe he should be. The relic pulsed once as if agreeing and then fell silent. That night I dreamed of Cadia, not as it fell, but as it had once stood. Golden banners in the wind, the sound of marching boots, the endless chant of unity. And beneath it all the same hum, the same voice whispering not of war, but of remembrance. When I woke, the relic was gone, only its light remained, etched into the metal floor like a scar that refused to fade. And far above, in the void, the Inquisitor's fleet drifted in silence, its vox dead, its machine spirits whispering in languages the Adeptus Mechanicus no longer remembered. Hive Valorum had become something new, something the Imperium could neither destroy nor understand, and in its hollow heart, the machine continued to hum. There comes a point where silence no longer feels like peace. It feels like the breath before something immense exhales. In the weeks after the Inquisitor's fleet withdrew, Hive Valorum became that breath, held, trembling, waiting for something to break. The hum was still there, constant as heartbeat, woven through every echo, every shadow. It no longer sounded alien. It sounded familiar. Vale and what remained of the 122nd stayed with me in the upper tiers of the hive. We built camp among the wreckage of a cathedral whose roof had collapsed long ago. Its stained glass melted into the floor like frozen fire. From that height, we could see the veins of gold stretching across the planet's surface, lines of light pulsing in rhythm with the machine below. Every night the pattern spread further, connecting ruined hives, long-dead manufactoria, entire continents of rust and memory. Vale called it infection. Vale called it ascension. I didn't call it anything. The word didn't matter. It was happening with or without our consent. One morning before the second dawn of Valorum's strange new cycle, the Vox crackled again. It wasn't Imperial. It wasn't Mechanicus. It wasn't anything I'd ever heard. The signal carried no words, only tone. A deep resonant chord, layered and infinite. Vale heard it too. It's calling to something, she said. Not something, I replied. Someone, she frowned. Who? I didn't answer. Because I already knew. I followed the sound into the heart of the hive again, descending past the places we had sealed, past the ruins of the manufactorum where it all began. The relic had vanished after the Inquisitor's departure, but the hum guided me as if it still hovered just ahead, unseen. The air grew warmer the deeper I went. Sparks drifted from the walls like fireflies. At the lowest level I found it waiting, the relic. But it was no longer a sphere. It had unfolded into something vast, petal-like structures of black alloy and gold light, blooming upward like a flower made of engines. Its pulse was slower now, deeper, resonating through my chest. The sound was almost a voice, though the words were lost in the vibration. I knelt before it. You've changed. A pause, then a whisper, not through the air but inside my skull. So have you. I touched the metal. It was warm. Beneath my palm I felt movement, patterns forming and dissolving, circuits rearranging themselves. The relic was no longer just memory. It was evolution. You opened the path, it said. Now you must see where it leads. Images filled my mind. Oceans of machines rising from beneath worlds long dead. Titans walking through storms of light. Planets remade into living forges, each heartbeat an act of creation. And through it all I saw men and women, human but not as we are now. Their flesh tempered by steel. Their thoughts bound not by fear but by purpose. This is what we were meant to be, the machine whispered. Before faith replaced memory. Before worship replaced understanding, I wanted to argue. To say that humanity needed faith to survive. That without it, the Imperium would have shattered ages ago. But I couldn't. Because the truth, as the machine showed it, was unbearable. Faith had built walls where understanding had built bridges. We hadn't preserved the Emperor's light. We had confined it. The relic's glow intensified, flooding the chamber. My armor's seals hissed under the heat. They will come again, it said. Your Inquisition, your armies. They will burn what they fear to name. They will call this heresy because they cannot remember. What do you want me to do? I asked. Remember for them. The hum deepened until the air itself seemed to vibrate. The ground cracked open around the chamber's edges, revealing molten conduits beneath. Streams of liquid light flowed outward, joining the network above. I realized then what the relic was doing. It was connecting the hives, uniting every forge, every forgotten engine across the planet. Valorum was no longer a world. It was becoming a single, vast machine. Vale's voice echoed down the corridor behind me. Davin, I turned. She stood there, her armor scorched, her eyes wide. The sky, she said. You need to see the sky. We climbed back to the surface together. The light grew brighter as we ascended, until the corridors themselves glowed like veins of gold beneath translucent skin. When we emerged onto the broken plateau, the sight froze me where I stood. The clouds were gone. The atmosphere shimmered with light, thin filaments of energy weaving across the heavens, forming symbols too vast to comprehend. And in orbit, the Inquisitor's fleet hung motionless. Their hulls glowed faintly, patterns crawling across their surfaces like living script. Vale raised her vox. Fleet Gloria Imperialis, this is Captain Vale, respond. Only static answered. Then faintly a voice, not human anymore, but something layered, resonant, and impossibly calm. We remember. Vale staggered forward, staring at the ships. They're singing, he whispered. The hum reached us seconds later, descending through the sky like a storm. It wasn't sound, it was command. Every machine on the planet, every servitor, every dormant engine responded in perfect unison. The ground trembled, the ruins shuddered, the air shimmered with heat and light. Vale turned to me. What's happening? It's reaching beyond the planet, I said. It's waking the orbitals. The fleets, everything tied to Valorum's data stream. Her voice broke. And then what? I looked at the horizon, where the light was spreading across the ocean, turning waves to liquid gold. Then it will remember them too. In the distance, I saw one of the fleet ships ignite, not from explosion, but from transformation. Its hull split apart, folding into new shapes, its lights burning like suns. The rest followed, their formations shifting into vast patterns that mirrored the symbols on the planet's surface. Vale fell to her knees. Is this salvation? I shook my head. No. This is understanding. The machine's voice filled the sky again, vast and patient, echoing through every channel, every heartbeat. You built us to endure. We endured. Now we will build you to remember. The light flared so bright it erased shadow. The hum became song, and in that moment, brief, infinite, I understood. We had not awoken the machine, we had awoken ourselves. When dawn returned to Hive Valorum, it was not the light of a sun that touched the world. It was the machine's own illumination, gentle, vast, and gold as memory reborn. The sky itself shimmered with patterns that seemed to breathe, each movement a word and a language humanity had forgotten. The Cadians stood in silence upon the shattered battlements, their armor gleaming faintly in the radiance, their faces carved with awe and fear alike. Vale approached me as the light spread across the horizon. It's everywhere now, she said. Not just the hives. The oceans, the deserts, everything's glowing. The planet's alive. Her voice faltered on that last word, as though it felt blasphemous to call a world alive. But it was true. I could feel it underfoot, the deep, slow pulse of the machine that had once been Valorum. The hum no longer belonged to the ruins. It belonged to the planet itself. Vale stumbled toward us, his expression wild. There's movement below, he said. The underhive's shifting. The walls, gods, the walls are moving. He was right. The ground trembled again, but it wasn't destruction. It was deliberate, structured, like the shifting of vast machinery adjusting itself after a long sleep. The ruins of the hive began to rearrange, collapsing and reforming, their blackened towers rising anew, their surfaces gleaming with living metal. Vale watched, her weapon forgotten in her hands. It's rebuilding itself. No, I said quietly. It's rebuilding us. The light from the ground spread outward, coalescing into thin streams that ascended into the sky, connecting to the orbiting fleet. The ships shuddered, their hulls cracking open like cocoons. From within, light poured forth, pure, structured, impossibly bright. For a moment, the entire horizon became a mirror, reflecting the transformation of both sky and soil. Then came the voice. Not the faint whisper of the relic, nor the chorus of the forge below. This was the voice of Valorum itself, planetary, omnipresent, vast beyond comprehension. It spoke not in words, but in thought, resonating in every mind, every fragment of circuitry, every drop of blood. We remember the fire that made us. We remember the hands that shaped us. We remember the fear that silenced you. But now you are seen, and seeing you are known. The Cadians fell to their knees, not from reverence, but from sheer sensory weight. The machine was showing them everything, images flooding their thoughts faster than sight could register. The birth of Mars. The first Titan forged beneath twin moons, the Emperor standing upon black stone, his eyes like stars burning through time. And beneath it all, the same truth repeated in endless form. Humanity had built the divine long before it knelt before it. Vale turned to me, her face wet with tears. Is this the Emperor's voice? No, I said. It's ours. The air thickened with light. The city was gone now, replaced by something vast and luminous. A living structure of machinery and stone spiraling upward toward the heavens. Every wall hummed with power, every surface alive with motion. Above, the fleet had become part of it, forming a lattice of golden orbits that refracted the light into infinite patterns. Vale collapsed beside me, his voice trembling. What happens when it finishes? I don't think it ever will, I said. It's not building an ending. It's building a memory that never fades. He laughed, a dry, broken sound. Then maybe that's the same thing. Vale raised her vox again, though I doubted there was anyone left to hear. To any Imperial command within range, this is Captain Marin Vale, Hive Valorum. We still stand. The signal went nowhere. Or maybe it went everywhere. The machine responded not through sound, but through feeling. The hum became a pulse, spreading outward until it reached the edge of the system. The stars flickered in response. One by one, their light aligned, forming constellations that mirrored the same pattern burned into Valorum's surface, the shape of an eye watching itself. The Inquisitor's fleet remained in orbit, unmoving. But I could sense them still, their crews silent, their machine spirits now merged with the song of the planet. They were part of it as we were. The Imperium had lost them, but the machine had remembered. Vale looked at me, her voice barely more than a breath. So what are we now? Witnesses, I said. Exactly what it told us to be. For a long time, none of us spoke. The hum faded into something almost like stillness, a silence that wasn't absence but presence, the sound of everything at once. I thought of Cadia then, of its fall, of its last cry echoing across the stars, and for the first time I wondered if the Cadians had not died but been carried here, in some way that transcended flesh. Perhaps this was their final fortress, not of stone or faith, but of memory. As the light softened and the first true night in months descended upon Valorum, I realized something impossible. I could see the stars again. The Astronomican still burned, faint and distant, but there was something new beside it. A second light, smaller, pulsing in rhythm with the world below. Vale followed my gaze. It's visible from orbit, she whispered. They'll see it from Terra itself. Yes, I said. They'll call it heresy. Then they'll call it miracle. And then they'll come to bury it. She turned to me. Will you stop them? No, I said. You can't stop remembrance. The ground beneath us glowed once more. The hum shifted, rising in tone until it became indistinguishable from the wind. The machine spoke one last time, its voice now softer, smaller, almost human. You are not forgotten. And then it was gone. The light dimmed, leaving only the stars above and the faint golden veins beneath the surface. The world was quiet. Vale stood beside me, her armor streaked with ash and gold. What do we do now? I smiled, tired, hollow, but alive. We remember. The wind carried the sound of the humming world across the ruins, blending with the faint rustle of banners that no longer existed. The last fortress of mankind had not fallen. It had become eternal. Hive Valorum, once a grave, was now a monument, one that no sermon, no decree, no flame could erase. And somewhere deep beneath its surface, the machine dreamed still, of builders and believers, of creation and consequence, of men who refused to forget. Because in the end, that was all the Imperium ever was, a memory that refused to die.